What's up, everyone? Welcome back to House of Footy. It's your boy Ray, and with me, I got a full house. Welcome, Mac
Good evening.
and Gio.
What is good?
Today, we'll be going over we're going to be previewing the upcoming Champions League final taking place this weekend. We'll also be going over the Europa Conference League final, which took place yesterday, and also we'll touch on some major transfer news around the world of footy. Before we get into it, don't forget to follow us on our social medias, both on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle is at @house_of_footy. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. And lastly, if you're free to get in touch with us via email, we love hearing from you guys and we want you guys getting involved. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. Gio, the biggest match in club football every year is taking place this weekend, and that's between Manchester City and Inter Milan to determine, obviously, the Champions League winners. And now this is obviously a big one for both teams. This is for City a chance to win the treble. They've already won the Premier League and the FA Cup so far. Whereas Inter Milan, they finished third in the Serie A and won the Coppa Italia. So adding silverware to that third place finish and Coppa Italia would definitely be, I think, a successful season for them. But how do you see this game planning out?
Now I think football fans across the world. I think the question they're asking is it is it even going to be close? Is do Inter really have a chance? Per se, those are the type of questions that are kind of being floated. That have been floating around the internet. Yeah, I think there's always a chance. If City think they can get away with playing the way they played against Man United, then I think Inter are going to be ready to attack and get every chance they can. Um, but I think with how City set up all year this year, where well not all year for the majority of the year, where whenever they do have the ball, John Stone's just up to be that second defensive midfielder next to Rodri and kind of allows KDB and those guys to kind of push up and kind of create pace one and then create offensive chances. If they play anything like that, Inter are going to have a really hard time, getting the ball back and really getting chances of their own. The only way I can really see them, garnering a couple of chances is, obviously, through a free kick or through a dead ball. Balls whipped in early and often. That's really the way I can see it. Maybe cause cause a ruckus with, say, Romelu Lukaku being a stronger hold up guy. And yeah, no, I think when Lukaku has played Man City in the Prem as well, that's kind of how he was utilized as well. So I think there's always a possibility of him getting a start here, although he's not usually the starter. He's been in and out of the starting lineup, but um, yeah, no, there are possibilities that can play out where Inter do have a good game and can catch City kind of off guard, really.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think it's fair to say Mac City are favorites heading into this match. Do you echo that same thought?
To some extent, yes, but I do think there is much more of a clear game plan here that Inter Milan are very, very comfortable with in terms of how to be successful in this game and to potentially take something off this Man City team. I think this might be a hot take, but I think they're set up to have a higher opportunity to be able to beat them than any team Man City has faced thus far in the Champions League. Given how well defensive that they have been this season, they very much play. It's a 3-5-2, but it shapes in really to a 5-3-2, and every single central midfielder that pops up, Umbrella, Calhanoglu, and Mkhitaryan, even though it seems unconventional, they really play deep and they play in a very, very low block, and that's how they've done the entire season. So it's something that Real Madrid tried to do in their previous round of fixtures against Man City. However, didn't really have the kind of the tools in the toolbox to play that game. That's not something they do week in, week out. This is something Inter Milan though does. And in terms of creating opportunities on the way out, I assume Dzeko is probably going to start. I know, Ray, you may want to touch on that later, because they've really done a good job of playing a kind of a starter-finisher role where Dzeko starts, Lukaku comes in for the final 30 minutes, as well as any extra time, and Lautaro Martinez is kind of the consistent threat where as soon as the ball comes out from probably, I would argue, one of the best goalkeepers with his feet, Onana, be able to play that long, play a big man, small man game in a strike force on a counter against I would argue, probably not the most physical defensive three once John Stones leaves, between Ruben Diaz, Kyle Walker, and Nathan Ake, who are the likely starters. They might be able to get some joy there, as well as defensively. They're going to be in a good enough shape as like a back. I would say the three center halves and three center midfielders to clog up the middle. Where if they can keep Man City to the out wide to the outside, make sure that De Bruyne, Haaland don't get touches in the 18, at the top of the 18, and just keep the ball out there, they should be solid enough defensively to make sure that Man City don't get on the board early and often. And the longer that drags on, the longer that stress is going to build on this Man City team. So I think I completely agree with how you kind of open the question, is that Man City are heavy favorites. They should be heavy favorites. They should win by a couple of goals. But I do think there is more of a clear game plan of how Inter Milan can be successful in this fixture still.
Interesting. Yeah. I definitely see that. Obviously, we expect Inter to be much more defensive in this game. The three at the back that started against AC Milan, Matteo Darmian, former Man U player, of course, Acerbi and Bastoni. I expect a lot of rotating yellow cards between all three of them, trying to take their turns against Holland, and definitely a lot of doubling between Dumfries and DeMarco on each side, on the right and on the left, on likely Grealish and Bernardo Silva whenever they get the ball out wide. So yeah, I do expect the way this game will sort of play out for most of the game, I think, will be quite slowly paced against Real Madrid, and we've seen that now from City this year. They don't have to hit you as quickly as needed, because they can just grind you down by keeping the ball well enough in areas and exploit the matchups that they get. And that's what they've been so good at. And then obviously you have the Holland threat. So I do expect a slower paced game throughout, but that doesn't mean City won't start fast the way they did against Manu Gio. Obviously, if they want to sort of get a hold of this game early on, that's what they're going to have to do. And what other way to set the pace than to really go at Inter and try to get a goal in the first maybe 10-15 minutes. And if that happens, I don't really see a lot of chance for Inter having to come out and then really exposing themselves that much for them to come back. Joe, what do you think? If City do go ahead in the lead, is there a chance for Inter to come back? Sort of that same question for AC Milan when they did AC Milan against AC Milan, Inter did get the lead, and then it sort of made their play style a lot easier. But do you think if they do concede early, that would sort of change the game?
Um, I think I think I think Man City are just too strong in winning the ball back. And I think if they score the early goal, I think more will follow. And I think simply because I think the quality in the midfield, in which and in sort of the fashion that they do win the ball back, they kind of, as soon as they lose the ball, they kind of collapse on whoever the ball carrier is on the opposing team. Either you pick a foul, you pick up a foul, and then you stop the play there, and they're able to regroup and kind of win the ball back after the fact. But again, I think they're just too well disciplined, and I don't think, from sort of 2 months ago, when they're kind of like their run of form started to kind of kick into to peak City. I don't think they've had a bad enough game that that they let a lead slip, or they've deserved a loss. So I think it's going to be very hard for Inter, at least, to play a goal down, as City's discipline these past couple of months have been far too good. Has been far too good.
Interesting. Yeah, no, exactly. Obviously, topping their group in the Champions League, beating RB Leipzig, Bayern Munich, then Real Madrid to get themselves to this final. Just looking at those teams, well-deserved finalists at the very least. But on the flip side, Inter did finish second in their group with Bayern and Barca. They beat two Portuguese teams, Porto and Benfica, before AC Milan to reach the final. Um, it's still a big accomplishment, and it seems like they've hit form right sort of at the tail end. They did win the Coppa Italia in May as well, so great for them to be on this hot streak. I guess I want to bring a question to you, Mac. Considering I just had to look up. Obviously, we all know the previous coach for Inter Milan was Antonio Conte, who also coached Spurs and got decent results against Man City in the Premier League. Antonio Conte did leave Inter Milan 2 years ago, but I think a lot of that core was brought in by him, and sort of that play style was brought in by him. Does that have anything to play in sort of the in Pep's mind here? Just wanted to read out Antonio Conte and Pep have faced each other 7 times. Conte has won four, and Pep has won 3 times. And so Conte technically has the upper hand on him, but obviously he's not the manager for this game. Inzaghi is, but a lot of that sort of his principles, I think, still resonate with this Inter Milan team, who are experienced pros. What do you think about that?
I think that's a very interesting point. Obviously, it's tough when you're looking at a culture transition. It's not as if it's like been a couple weeks ago. It's been some time. But I do, and that's why I think that Inter Milan, and kind of my point earlier, is they do have the system in place to expose this team. Because defensively, if you're sound enough, you don't make any mistakes, and that's what they do. And one of their, and something I, after doing further watching of a lot of Onana, how great he is with his feet, that's one of the biggest reasons why, is where he doesn't feel rushed. Because a lot of times what ends up happening in football today against a Man City press is that defenders start to make mistakes, goalkeepers start to make mistakes, which cause errors, which lead to Man City opportunities. If your goalkeeper is so good with the ball at his feet, there's an easy outlet consistently game in, game out, as well as a good outlet to receive the ball. A player like Edin Dzeko or Lukaku coming on are big, nasty players that want to win that first ball and cause a problem for the defenders, or even because they're able to stretch the pitch out with the two wing backs being DeMarco and Dumfries on either side. There are outlets there for this team to progress up the field and not shoot themselves in the foot like a lot of other teams have done against this Manchester City team. I do, though, think that in history wise, it'd be very interesting because something has to end in some ways, where if you just look at historical context for these two teams, the two clubs, Man City have to overcome the fact that they've only reached 2 European Cup finals, lost both. One, of course, we all remember against Chelsea previously before. That was like 1970. None of us were born. I apologize. I was not born at that point. And they also have to overcome the Yaya Toure curse, right? So that's very difficult. So, you have those things going against them. And Inter Milan do have history inside because they are very much a European decorated club. They have the third most European finals appearances from the Italian teams, behind Juventus and AC. So if you just look at it that, if you 10 years ago saw this matchup and were expecting who to win, it would have been Inter Milan. But now history's kind of really has flipped, and it'll be interesting to see if this Man City team can get the duck off their back with this first European trophy.
For sure. And so I guess that leaves us to our last question for this part. Gio, I do have to ask, can you kindly give us your predictions for this final match?
Okay. Why don't I give the listeners sort of and the watchers who are on YouTube, um you know both sides of the world. Okay. My brain tells me 3-1 City. But my heart wants. Let me tell you what my heart wants, folks. My heart wants a 2-1 Inter Milan in extra time. That would be peak for me, and it would stop the treble, and it would cap off my weekend. Wouldn't matter what happened after that fact. As long as they're able to stop the treble, I'd be happy. I don't care what fashion. Yeah, no.
Yeah, no, I do also agree with you. I wouldn't want to see City win the treble, but I mean it's pretty much set in their hands for this game. So I do think City will be favorites and probably win it maybe 2-0. And that leaves Mac. Lastly, for you, can you give us your predictions for this game?
As the man of the three of us that is least known of being a hater, I really don't care. You two seem to have a lot of hate in your heart. You guys should work that out. I don't know what Man City did to both of you. Actually, I have an idea of what Man City does to the both of you. But I think analysts have there's a 75% chance overall, if it be in regular time or added time, that Man City would end up winning this game. It would be foolish not to put my money. If I were to put money, which I won't, but if I were to put money, I'll put on money on Man City. I do think it is very likely could be a 3-0 win for Man City. I do really want to be able to. I'm very interested to see if at the 60th minute mark, if it is 0-0, what happens there. I think that's the way that for me the match would become interesting. Even if Inter Milan at that point have a lead, I don't think that would change or impact how City plays for the remainder of the 30 minutes. For me, it's really at 0-0, what happens if the game lasts that long? Of course, that may seem of a boring final, but I feel like even within that, there could be a lot of opportunities for both teams. But again, I think Man City will probably win 2 or 3-0, but I would really love to see, at least for the first 60 minutes, at least, something entertaining until things start to unravel from there.
Yeah, for sure. 90-minute game, and so a lot of action that could possibly take place. Definitely, we'll keep an eye on that. But let's take a quick break here now, boys, and then we'll be back with the review of the Europa Conference League Final. So stay with us, guys. Welcome back to House of Footy, guys. We are going to continue our podcast now discussing the Europa League Conference Final between Fiorentina and West Ham, which saw West Ham, of course, win 2-1 and become the Europa Conference League champions. This was a very important game between these two clubs, Mac, as both teams needed to win this competition to be in European football next year. Fiorentina did finish 8th in the Serie A, one spot behind Juventus, who will be in the Conference League next year. And then West Ham, of course, finished 14th in the Premier League, but of course now qualify for next year's Europa League. And so big result for West Ham. How did you see the game?
I think I'm gonna take the side that I'm 100% biased, and I don't mean to disrespect Fiorentina, the club, the players, the fans, but I could not care less. I'm so excited for West Ham fans, London, what they've done. David Moyes himself, this is his first title in his history. I don't know if you saw him celebrating with his 87-year-old dad after the game. Absolutely warms the heart. Absolutely love to see the scenes. It's their first major trophy as a club in 40 something years. So overall, the game itself was kind of uplifting in a lot of ways. It wasn't, I would say, the highest quality of games. There were only a couple of really key opportunities I know that we're definitely going to talk about. But overall, I thought the game, like I said, in those opportunities was enjoyable to watch. I thought Fiorentina, on average, was probably the better team and probably felt a little bit discouraged to not come out with something. Not to come out, at least to be able to at least make it to extra time. I know that we're going to talk about probably the handball call that was very contentious and took a long time for the referee to be able to make a decision. Even in I was watching a bit of the game and then rewatching the game afterwards, the highlights, even the highlights of the referee watching the review was 3 or 4 minutes long. I'm like, this is obscene. But overall, like I said, the last point being really, it's great to see back to back. I think it's English captains for you, Ray, of English teams lifting European trophies that you love so much. Henderson and then Declan Rice. Isn't that lovely to see? You cannot be happy, right?
Very happy for them.
Okay, that's good.
That's good for them specifically. Sure,
of course,
definitely a positive for them. But Gio, let's dive straight into the game. I guess. Do you think Fiorentina hard done by? Apart from obviously the handball and the last minute winner by none other than our favorite Jared Bowen. Very tight calls, and Fiorentina had more of the possession. You could say looked the better team on the night. What do you think about that?
Um, it's sort of hard to say, but better team of the night. I agree. But obviously, when it mattered the most, and took their opportunities and took their chances and weren't afraid to take their chances. Again, a lot of people, might have, kind of shanked that ball, at that Jared Bowen goal because
Mm.
is it going to be offside, whatever. They still played that ball, and if it's going to be overturned, VAR's going to overturn it. If it's a goal, VAR will confirm that it's a goal. So it's things like that that really they saw that they really had nothing to lose. Obviously, not making European football is the big thing, but sometimes when you know you've been outplayed that entire game, you really just have to take your chances to win the game. And I think as the game went on and as the game were to be extended, then I think Fiorentina had a very good chance of taking that in extra time if that were the case. Now, so that was very important. But yeah, I just think Fiorentina again they didn't capitalize on their chances. Well enough. Kind of left the door open a little too ajar too open for far too long. It's just I don't know. But again, shouts out to David Moyes, who is a former United manager.
Yes,
Congrats to
sir.
you, sir. And then yeah, again, the one person that we've all wanted to join Liverpool, who isn't going to join Liverpool, Jared Bowen. Love to see him, succeed after again having a tough season, coming off injuries, not being, his best self. I'm sure he thinks of that, thinks that as well. As these athletes are very critical of themselves, but I think they were good in setting the tempo early, like 35 seconds in, they were already trying to, hit him on the counter. So I think they knew their game plan. It's just Fiorentina outplayed them majority of the game. Now, again, that didn't take away from their game plan, and they executed at the end when they had the opportunity. So you give all the credit to West Ham.
Yeah, game plan for sure. One of the things leading up to that penalty, a Sufal long throw, which was causing Fiorentina lots of trouble in this game. That's what led up to the Bowen really chance bringing it down onto his chest, and then Baraghi was the player who handles it while challenging Bowen to that ball. And so Mac, I guess thoughts on that penalty decision?
First of all, I love the long throw-in. It's one of my favorite moves. Watching a lot of Wrexham play, it was just like the lower tier of English football. How many teams employ the long throw, and then you go to a different country, and they're like, "What is this? Why would you do this? Don't do this. This is not okay. These are against the rules, right?" So it was lovely to see the panic of your team. It's like, okay, we're not used to seeing this in Serie A, but in regards to the penalty itself, again, I thought it was pretty clear given the impact it had. I could understand looking at it from the Fiorentina fans' perspective. It wasn't necessarily intentional, but what happened in the resulting impact where it completely took the chance of an opportunity away from Jared Bowen, the ball going directly back to the goalkeeper, kind of how high the hand was, even though it wasn't, like I said, I wouldn't say it was purposeful. It definitely was the correct call. And even going up to take the penalty, you felt very confident from Ben Rama because for West Ham, he definitely has been very clinical from the spot, done a good job there. And aside from him, I'll be honest with you, if they were to get the penalties, aside from him, I was very scared about any options that West Ham did have because it doesn't seem like, if you just look at that lineup, it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of clean strikers of the ball from the spot. They just, my opinion there, but took it very well. Struck it very. It was not going to be stopped. It wasn't as if it was probably the greatest penalty kick, but I think even if the keeper dove the right way, it would have been very, very difficult to be able to stop that. So overall, in that moment in a cup final, you have those opportunities. They kind of created their own chaos by winning that penalty with that long throw, and to be able to stick it away is key because even though they did end up winning it in the last minute without that penalty, that would have just took them to the extra time, right? And it definitely would have been a very different game because throughout the first 60 minutes, Fiorentina were the better team. I think the biggest chance that come up for me, I don't know if I recall correctly, the Jovic opportunity from just inside the 18 was in the first half, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And that was the biggest opportunity to that point. So it was, and prior to then, there wasn't a clear opportunity for West Ham. So for them to be able to get on the board after doing something like that was absolutely vital for them.
Yeah, yeah. On that penalty call, I do agree. I think it is a penalty. But interesting question for you, Gio. How much of that Roma Sevilla penalty call missed by Anthony Taylor have effect in this referee's decision to make that penalty call? I thought that because that previous penalty in the game that happened last week wasn't given, and there was so much spotlight on that. I felt like the referee was kind of pushed towards making that decision. Do you agree with that, Gio?
Yes and no. At the end of the day, if the referee missed the call, VAR is able to overturn. But the fact of the matter that even VAR didn't overturn it. So like in that Roma game. So whose fault is it really? Is it so? Yes, it was clear and obvious, but I think it's very clear and obvious here. And I think the team obviously, they don't try to let that factor in their ability to ref this game. So I think you gotta take it by a case by case context. And this team didn't really miss the call. The call was what it was, and again, I think we all agree that it was a pen. So no, I don't think it had an effect, and hopefully it doesn't really have an effect on this weekend's game. And
Hmm.
hopefully the calls are made correctly. Even without the assistance of VAR, but hopefully whoever is in charge of VAR is making the correct calls. To call the referee over to have a look and not ruin a very important game for many people.
For sure, for sure. It's important to note after that, not even 10 minutes after the first goal, um, Fiorentina were able to equalize. And so it was still a good game going towards the end, which, we saw Jared Bowen stick that into the back of the net on the 90th minute mark. And so, yeah, that really summed up the game. West Ham were able to pick their opportunities and finish them away, and that really, it comes down to those situations, right? And that does secure Mac their first major trophy in 43 years. And yeah, the players such as Declan Rice, Paketa, Jared Bowen, you gotta feel great for them, that even though they didn't have the greatest season in the Premier League, this is the quality that they have. And moving forward next season, whether Rice and or David Moyes are there, they still can show that they have the quality in and around the squad to build off of that. I guess, opinion for you, Mac, is that Declan Rice's last game and or David Moyes' as well?
So we can know for certain it is Declan Rice's last game because the chairman of the football team came out and said that that was his last game. And they had come to an agreement. I think like last summer they offered him £200,000 a week, and he said no. And since then there has been no contract negotiations whatsoever, aside from saying yes, okay, if at the end of the season we'll handle it. A lot of clubs have been very respectful, supposedly from what the chairman said is that 4 different clubs were interested, but no official offer was made until the season was over. But the amount of memes I've seen of Arteta just sitting in the Arteta in the locker room after the celebration with all of the money in the world lined up, already ready to go, it probably seems apt. And I think that's what kind of has been the buzz within the last couple of weeks, is that that's probably would be they'll be one of the teams most interested in it and probably in a front foot, as the other teams in conversation, the Chelsea's, the Manchester United, probably have different priorities that they're looking to be able to do, versus Arsenal's probably main target would be Declan Rice. So I think that 100% he's gone. The question is David Moyes. If I'm him, I don't know his financial situation whatsoever, but this is definitely a great way to end out on top, because next season I don't foresee them walking into and winning the Europa League or going back to back, because there has to be some shuffling of the squad, and probably it'll take a couple more years to have the full reshuffle done, because you're probably looking to move off Mikel Antonio within the next couple of years. Paquetá started to seem like he grew into the season towards the second half, but you need to replace Declan Rice. Souček, a couple of the defenders are getting up in years. Areola then will have to now start in goalkeeper consistently over Fabianski. So there's a lot of rollover in the club that has to happen. And I don't know if I'm David Moyes, after coming off this high, you'd want to come back and do that work per se, and maybe look at a fresh opportunity, or maybe looking at stepping away, because he is in his mid-60s, right? I know Roy Hodgson has really changed how we feel about older managers and how long people should keep coaching. But if I don't know, mid-60s, you win a trophy, you walk away from the game like that. You also saw Everton stay up in your final season. Everything seems roses for him now. So again, if I'm him, I walk away. But I think West Ham are going to allow him to do what he wants, which is, I think, the correct way to go about it.
Yeah, and so Gio, I guess same question to you. Given the fact that I'm sure you guys came across the clip as well on online, where Mikel Antonio, an actual active West Ham player, mentioned the his teammate Gianluca Scamacca, who came to West Ham for 35 million pounds this summer and hasn't really featured as much, quoting that David Moyes' style of play is sort of not the most beneficial for that type of player. Do you think that with European football next season, West Ham should be looking elsewhere now, or do you think you just start with David Moyes and then see how it goes in the first couple of months of the season?
Well, that all depends on who they keep and who's in, who's out, and things of that nature. But if this is if Declan Rice leaves and that's the sort of the proverbial turning of the pages, changing of the guard, then yeah, I would say maybe it might be time to bring in maybe a younger manager who you can kind of work with, similar to how not to say that they're going to reach those levels, but similar to how Arsenal brought in Arteta and kind of let him take the reins and really try to mold a team to his way, to his style of play, bring in the right players. It doesn't happen overnight, so it's going to take years, as it did with Arsenal. So do you want to give someone free reign to do that? Then if that's the case, then yeah, this is a great summer to do it. But you know, I think the major thing is selling the fans on it. Obviously, winning a trophy. Their first big trophy in like 56 years or something like that, which has been huge. After winning a trophy, first time in 56 years, do you really want to blow it up now, or even without Declan Rice, do you want to try and go out there and compete? There's no saying how far they can get, but do you want to go out there and compete and kind of please the fans in that sense? Um, yeah, so there's a lot of options on their books, but I think the best way is kind of hit the reset button. Get as much as you can for Deck and maybe a couple of other guys. Maybe someone who's looking for a backup striker. You kind of send. You kind of see him. Michael Antonio's interested. He make a great backup striker. For any team. Try to get some money there and kind of redisperse, and just reinvest your earnings and start fresh.
Yeah, and for sure, starting fresh for a lot of teams will be a big transfer window, which we'll definitely cover next, and especially with the Premier League having 8 teams in European competitions next year, a lot of movement will be needed for those teams to sort of strengthen, and so that's what we're going to be covering when we come back from the break. So stay with us, guys. Welcome back to House of Footy, guys. We are going to finish off today's podcast now discussing some transfers in the world of footy. And we have to start with one of the biggest ones in the last couple of days. Gio Messi has announced that he intends to head to Inter Miami. And in the process, declining offers from clubs in Saudi Arabia and as well Barcelona to sort of make that move. What are your thoughts on that overall?
Yeah, no, I think apart from the money, I think he's still getting a good large sum of money coming in
Mm,
here based on endorsement deals. It simply only makes sense. The MLS being sponsored by Adidas, Messi being an Adidas sponsored, lifetime athlete. That, and we're hearing, he gets part of the Apple streaming,
mhm.
Apple TV streaming service, endorsement deals. Um, and I guess Miami makes sense. Obviously, the warmer climates. You know, obviously knowing David Beckham for a very long time, whether it be at soccer matches, through football or even through the Adidas linkage. They're obviously very familiar, and David Beckham probably played a huge part in the courtship of this whole deal to go through, or to even come about. So I think yeah, no, I think it makes sense for him to continue to grow his name and you know kind of capitalize on a market that's been craving someone of this nature. They've the MLS has always been known as sort of a retirement league. It still has kind of that stigma where stars of Europe come to really just sail off into the sunset. But we're seeing different scenarios now where even Rui Puig has gone to LA Galaxy early in his career, to sort of try and revive things. But it's one, it's good for the league to attract commercial and fans and things of that nature, but it's also good for Messi to not go to Saudi Arabia yet. I think that door will always be open because Saudi Arabia, will pay for names, and have no problems doing so. So yeah, I think it's a good business move. I think it's more so a business move than anything. They probably enjoy the lifestyle that America and Miami offers for the family and the kids, and I think his wife had a big part to do with it as well in terms of deciding on America as opposed to Saudi Arabia. You know, so yeah, no, I think it's a great business move for Messi.
Yeah, yeah, and that's exactly what I want to lead on to Mac about. A big sort of reason why, and he's sort of come out to say is, the last 2 years at PSG, and obviously from his move from Barcelona, he didn't. It felt kind of rushed. At PSG, he didn't really feel at home, and now he wants to focus on more of his family, and so he thinks this is the best environment for him moving forward. We saw Mac, of course, the Barcelona statement saying, they understand Messi wants to be away from the spotlight in a less challenging league. Now, I'm paraphrasing, but what are your thoughts about that comment, Mac?
So yes, I want to be able to get this because I think this is the biggest backhanded. It's probably like it's mad disrespect. If I'm Messi, if I'm enmity associated with Barcelona, I don't understand how you release that statement. How it's not vetted by someone with a couple of brain cells first. So the president Laporta understood and respected Messi's decision to want to compete in a league with fewer demands, further away from the spotlight and the pressure he has been subject to in recent years. So, and the interesting part is that a couple of hours afterwards, Messi did like a short interview that was released and translated because he doesn't speak English very comfortably. So, from kind of to paraphrase what he was saying is that his first choice was Barca. The only situation that he would return to a club in Europe was to go to Barcelona. Barcelona actually submitted an offer to him to go to them, but it wasn't actually signed or agreed to because in it had conditions that they had to, one, sell off players, and two, reduce salaries, which then he's back in the position he was prior to him leaving, where the club cannot financially support having a player like him. And with Liga's structuring of how the salary cap works, it's not as if he can walk in there and get paid nothing. Due to the amount of money that he makes in terms of imaging rights, there has to be a certain level of standard that he has to be paid. And given that fact, he'll be in a position where he walks through the door and other players have to be sold off that don't want to go. There were talks of Fabrizio Romano was talking that they were looking at flipping off De Jong or Ansu Fati. Those players didn't want to go. So now you're in a position where you have to force people out, and that inherits a bad position within the club. Even though he's probably very well, it would be a lot of excitement for him to return. If anything were to go wrong, that could quickly flip in the locker room. And now he's in a position where he's caused all these issues. So he said, instead of that, I don't want to deal with that. That's the only club I want to play for in Europe. The choices were either between going to Saudi Arabia or Inter Miami. So I think that's the crux of the conversation. And if people look at it differently from the Barcelona perspective, I just think that's just not well informed enough because there's a lot of details that go into it. And being in a team, I feel like that's a tough position. You walk in and you're literally taking everybody else's money for you to be able to fit in. I think that's not a great position to inherit, to generate a good, healthy working relationship, right, with other people. So, but the choices between that then became fascinating because I think in a lot of the reports where Messi was offered a 2-year contract for $1 billion in essence, combined with contract for 2 years, as well as some off the not player salary, but imaging money that he would get on the side from the league as well. And then once the reports were that he was going to go to Inter Miami, Saudi Arabia then bumped up the offer to 1.6 billion for 3 years to give him even more money potentially, and still no shot there. So even though I think Ray, you mentioned is that nothing's actually confirmed. He has not signed the dotted line. He's just kind of in LeBron James fashion. He's taking his talents to South Beach. I think that's basically all we have, and that's all we know. And to touch on the aspect I know, Gio, you mentioned earlier, the family part is because they actually already have a home in Miami. They have a house there. It's where they go spend some time in the off season every year. So it seems a natural fit and something that might be comfortable for them. So I do think that's a positive. And now I actually want to ask you both a question, and I'm curious to see how you feel about this. So let's assume everything goes well. He's going to go play for Inter Miami. Is this automatically probably the biggest sports star in the world going to North America, really, since Pele? I don't think there's anything close. Even kind of maybe the national brand of maybe what LeBron James or Michael Jordan can do. I don't necessarily think in terms of comparison to soccer or football, it's close where the global impact that they could have. So I think my opinion is yes. And I think this is huge for the league, what it can do, what it could potentially do for the upcoming World Cup as well. If it's an idea to ingratiate more fans, I don't know if we want to go into the ticket prices changed in the last couple of days for Inter Miami as well, the impact that's already had. So what are your thoughts on that? Like, what sort of impact can have? Is this the biggest star that's kind of really shown up to North America since before all of us were born?
Yeah, I'd have to say so. Again, his name is world renowned. So it doesn't matter where he goes. Wherever the destination would be, the crowds and the crowds in the thousands and hundreds of thousands will follow. So yeah, I think one, yeah, I agree with what you said about it backing the World Cup. I think it kind of has to force the hand of the MLS to want to reinvest into their facilities, one, and reinvest into their stadiums. You know that we need bigger stadiums to house more fans as this game is growing, and if you can land someone like Messi, who's to say more stars can't come and at a younger age, that they want to come and enjoy North America, which there still is a lot to do in North America, a lot of great places to enjoy in North America. So, yeah, I think this is a great stepping stone. If one of the biggest dominoes can drop and land in North America, there's no saying who can't. So, great move by the MLS. Great move by David Beckham and Inter Miami. Again, great business move by Messi as well.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Ray, my apology. Before you jump in, I want you to answer that question as well as what do you think? Who do you think shows up more to play with Messi? More of his former Argentina teammates that are out of contract, or more of his Barcelona teammates that are out of contract?
Hey, that's exactly what I was gonna say. Yeah, even I think so. The answer is yes. Even if he came 3, 4 years later, it would still be a big thing. But the fact that he is coming now, he can bring players like Di Maria link is happening. Sergio
Busquets.
Busquets has also been linked, and so that in itself, yeah, like what Gio said, that just continues to bring attention to the MLS, and for us, that's what all we wanted for us to sort of continue to get local football to be at the world stage. Hopefully, one day it can be. But also, I guess just to wrap up that part, obviously, and I was looking at this earlier while you guys were mentioning your comments. A flight from Saudi Arabia to Argentina is over 20 hours, but a flight from Miami to Argentina is around 10 hours. So that's a 10 hours fewer on a plane, and so that's a big selling point for him as well. Gio?
Uh, An extra 10 hours on a private jet, is that really that bad? Like,
Well, how many
I mean,
Argentinians are going to be able to take a private jet? I think that's it's not Saudi Arabia, it's Argentina. He's thinking Argentinians showing up to watch Messi
oh,
play in North America. Is that kind of where you're going, right?
Either
Oh,
way,
okay, okay.
either way.
if business and money is the grand scheme of things, then Messi, man, like 10 hours is really not that much. It's not too late to back out, brother. 1.6 billion is a lot of money. So yeah, extra 10 hours on a private jet, bring the dogs, bring the kids, whatever. Is it really that bad? Who knows? But again, I still think Miami's the better move for the future as well. Whether being an ambassador for whatever North American soccer there can be, then yeah, I think long term, further down the road when he does decide to retire from the actual game, then I think that always leaves the door open for that. As long as you create that rapport with the MLS and still hold that name in European football, then he'll always have fluid income.
And
Yeah,
to quickly jump in there, I'm very curious to see if Americans think they have an immigrant or a migrant problem now. Just wait. This is that border is going to be wild. I'm just saying. I'm just saying because they're also going to have a problem with the North. I'm coming in too, dog. Like, you know what I mean? I'm trying to get tickets. I'll do what I need to do.
Sure.
Sorry.
And on that note, for sure, everything is sort of played out. Copa America is taking place next year in the U.S. The FIFA World Cup is taking place in a couple of years, also U.S., Mexico, and Canada. So everything sort of played out there. Messi can be sort of that stepping stone, and for himself as well, if he intends to partake in those tournaments, he's already in that country. So something that he can probably has eyes on himself personally as well. But something that something that this happened this week as well. Karim Benzema has left Real Madrid. Had to do it after we recorded our podcast, but now it's confirmed. 3 years, $643 million. What a contract to sign in those latter years of your career. What are your thoughts about that, Mac?
Okay, so this is going to sound a little bit maybe biased, but I think this is horrible. I hate this. I would argue he might have one of the shortest primes in an elite striker in the history of world football. But he was good for 6 months, he wins a Ballon d'Or, wins the Champions League, and he's done. Like, I still think he has enough to play, and he left a team that desperately needed him. So I'm disappointed on that aspect because going in, I think we talked about in our last podcast, I would have liked him to see one more year. He could have got this money next year, give Real Madrid another year to transition to something else because they're bringing in a player we're going to talk about shortly. We may touch on Jude Bellingham, but they still have holes to fill, and he was very much, in my opinion, a needed piece. So I'm just as excited that's not fair, but I'm very disappointed this happened. Of course, he's entitled to make his own decision. I'm happy that he's able to get all the money, secure the bag, do what you need to do. I always understand that, but just from a footballing perspective, I'm not excited about this at all.
Gio, do you echo the same thoughts there?
Yeah, I'm a little disappointed, but to be fair, again, after sort of the latter half of the season where where he was kind of almost invisible in the two legs versus Man City. um I get it. You as an athlete, pro or not, you kind of almost doubt your ability at that age too. So if him and his camp believe this is the most money that this probably is more money that you've ever made in your entire career, or close to, take that and run. Again, if the passion isn't completely there and you don't think you can completely contribute to high level football, you know, then hey, by all means, go for it. Get your money. It'd be silly not to. It's half of, bro. Are you kidding? 600 million?
Yeah, that's
That's
insane.
half
It's a lot of money.
billy, no?
I
That's half a
I,
billy.
I don't think I think there's less than probably like 10 players that made that in their entire career, I would
That's what I'm
assume.
saying.
Right? I think that's an interesting conversation to have. So I think money
And
wise,
again,
yeah, I understand.
I think Karim Benzema being obviously Muslim. I think that does play a factor and all that as well. Being around the culture, and sharing the same morals, whether it's prayers or anything like that. Being in a country that are is already his religion, or things that he believes in. Just makes the stay ever more so bearable, even though he may not wholeheartedly want to play there. But it does make making that money easier. So I think him and his camp are very happy. His agents ecstatic.
For
You
sure.
know, so I think they get like a good cut of that. So again, if he doesn't think he can contribute, then hey, that's a good move on him. That's a that's something he as a professional footballer or a professional athlete has to come to terms with. And if he's come to terms with that, then absolutely go get your bag.
Yeah, and actually one of the things that hasn't been mentioned as much is how much football he's missed this year. He's been riddled with injuries, and who knows? Internally, he could be saying, my body is getting at that stage where maybe I can't go another full season. Perhaps going to a different league that is less physically demanding, per my understanding, could be good on top of the money that he's getting. So, yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on as well. N'Golo Conte, there's talks about him being close to being announced, and players such as Wilfried Zaha and Riyad Mahrez being linked as well to some Saudi Arabian clubs. So we'll keep an eye on that. But let's just wrap up the podcast now, guys, with a couple of transfers as well that have been confirmed or about to be confirmed. Firstly, as Mac alluded to, Jude Bellingham to Real Madrid. Mac, 110 million plus add-ons. We've touched on this before, but just quick overall thoughts. What do you think about that?
Uh, Again, I think that midfield is fascinating. I'm curious to see how you structure it out if Ancelotti's the coach to be able to do that, because you probably are talking about, if all works out, and if you look at Valverde, Jude Bellingham, Camavinga, and Chouameni, probably four of the 6, 7 top young central midfielders in world football. Easily, maybe four of top four. Maybe there's a name here that escapes my mind. And I'm talking about central, not like attacking midfielders, players like Odegaard, something like that. In that age range, it'll be very interesting to see what happens there. Because again, they all, I think, are it'll be interesting to see what type of formation, especially now with Benzema gone, what type of system we'll be able to utilize. But you're talking about, in my opinion, one of, if not the most attractive young footballers in the world. So that's always a great ad. But it hasn't always been easy for the British at Madrid. So we'll see how it goes.
That's for sure. I think if I'm getting this right, Gio, Nacho was confirmed as the captain for Real Madrid moving forward. Do you think Jude Bellingham could potentially take that armband soon? What are your thoughts on this transfer?
3 weeks.
As far as I'm concerned, if it's not Nacho, it's going to be another Spaniard. I think that's always been the case. Cristiano Ronaldo didn't really have the armband all that much either. It was Sergio Ramos. So, with that being said, I don't think Jude should be too shocked that he doesn't get it. It's the name of the game. It's always the Spaniard, and they'll always have a set number of Spaniards on that squad. So, if it's not Nacho, it's gonna be another one. So, but to that Jude Bellingham signing, hey, this is the start of something new, something great. It's gonna be Galactico 3.0. So it's just a matter of time who they bring in next. Who is it? Mbappe? Is it Erling Haaland? I think Agent Jude is already in that process. Laying down the foundation. Because I think if PSG don't end up winning or falling out of the Champions League early again this year, I think Mbappe's out. No matter how much control he has at that club, no matter how much say he has at that club or thinks he has at that club, I think the urge to win trumps whatever comfortability he has at that club or how much power he has at that club. Because at the end of the day, he's young, he's passionate about the game still, and he wants to win. So I think money does take a little dip, but hey, man, you play 8 more years if you want. Saudi's calling, bro. Saudi's calling. There's always a bag somewhere to be made. So don't you worry, brother. If you're not making the most money right now, you want to go chase trophies, go chase trophies. Don't you worry. That money will come. So yeah, no, I think this is the start to something great. Whether Ancelotti's there or not, there's going to be a coach there's going to be a manager that's going to be coaching talent from goalkeeper to striker, and those are all going to be top talents. It's a matter of what fits into what slots at this point.
Yeah, exactly. And it's fair to say as well, Dortmund, what a job they've done. Another 100 million secured, and hopefully they can reinvest it properly and challenge Bayern in next upcoming season. So we'll keep an eye on that. But that's enough time, guys. From us, this concludes our podcast for today. If you like what you heard, please like and subscribe to us on our social medias. That's at House of underscore Footy. If you have any comments, suggestions, or general banter, get in touch with us via email as well. House of footy@hotmail.com. The next time you hear from us will be Sunday when we review the Champions League final. Thank you, Mac, for joining us.
Will I need a lot of sunscreen in Miami? I assume so, right? No?
I think so. I think so.
Okay, gotcha.
Thank you, Gio.
The answer is bottles.
And thank you guys. See you guys soon.